Act 1. The First Whisper. Vancouver, British Columbia. Cindy James is 37 years old. She is a pediatric nurse, a woman who has dedicated her life to caring for children. She is described by friends and family as vibrant, caring, and kind. She is recently divorced from a psychiatrist, Roy Makepeace, but she is building a new life for herself in a quiet, suburban house in Richmond, a suburb of Vancouver. Her life appears normal until the phone rings. It starts slowly. The calls are silent at first, just the sound of breathing on the other end of a line. Then, the breathing turns into whispers. Malicious, threatening whispers. A voice, distorted and low, telling her that she is being watched, telling her that she is going to die. Cindy is terrified. She changes her number. She gets an unlisted line, but the calls continue. Then, the harassment escalates from the phone lines to her physical world. She comes home to find her garden destroyed. Piles of rocks are left on her porch. Her porch lights are smashed. She calls the police. They take a report, but there is little they can do. It's vandalism. It's prank calls. It's scary, but in the eyes of the law, it's not yet a major crime. But the stalker, as Cindy begins to call him, is just getting started. One night, Cindy hears a noise outside. She looks out the window and sees a shadow moving in her yard. The next morning, she finds a note pinned to her door. It is made of letters cut out from magazines, like a ransom note in a cheap movie. The message is simple and chilling. I'm watching you. Over the next few months, the terror ramps up. Cindy reports finding dead cats left on her doorstep. She finds her pillow slashed. Then the physical attacks begin. Cindy is found by a friend, unconscious on her kitchen floor. She has a nylon stocking tied tightly around her neck. She is bruised and battered. When she wakes up, she has no memory of the attack. She just remembers a shadow, a presence, and then darkness. The police investigate, but they find something strange. There is no sign of forced entry. The windows are locked. The doors are locked. Nothing is stolen. They begin to ask questions. Not about the stalker, but about Cindy. Is she stressed? Is she lonely? Is she making this up for attention? Cindy is outraged. She is a victim. She is being hunted. Act 2. The 7-year siege. This is not a short-lived nightmare. This is a siege that will last for 7 years. Between 1982 and 1989, Cindy James reports nearly 100 incidents of harassment and attack. The nature of the attacks becomes increasingly bizarre and violent. She is found unconscious multiple times. Sometimes she is drugged. Toxicology reports show high levels of sedatives in her system, drugs she has access to as a nurse, but drugs she denies taking voluntarily. She is found with needles injected into her arm. She is found tied to a chair. But the most disturbing incidents involve fire. One night, her house is set on fire. Cindy is found outside, hysterical. The police investigate. They find that the fire started inside. Again, no sign of forced entry. They suggest to her parents that Cindy might be setting the fires herself. They whisper the word Munchausen. They suggest she has a personality disorder. Cindy's family, her parents, her sister, stand by her. They see her fear. They see the physical bruises on her body. You cannot fake a bruise that deep, they argue. You cannot fake the terror in her eyes. Cindy hires a private investigator, a man named Ozzy Cabin. Ozzy is a former cop, a tough, no-nonsense guy. He takes the case, perhaps skeptical at first. But he sees things he can't explain. He installs security lights. They are smashed. He installs alarms. They are bypassed. One night, Ozzy is in the house with Cindy. He hears a noise on the two-way radio Cindy carries. He rushes to her. He finds her outside, lying in a ditch, suffering from hypothermia. She is wearing a man's work boot on one foot and a painting glove on her hand. A nylon stocking is tied around her neck. Ozzy believes her. He believes someone is hunting her. But the police remain unconvinced. They conduct a polygraph test. Cindy passes. She is telling the truth as she perceives it. But the police argue that if she has a split personality, the victim personality would believe it is telling the truth, even if the other personality is staging the attacks. The skepticism of the authorities drives Cindy into a deeper isolation. She feels abandoned. She checks herself into a psychiatric ward, hoping to prove her sanity or find safety. But the harassment follows her even there. She receives threatening calls at the hospital. By 1989, Cindy is a broken woman. She has lost her house. She has spent her savings on security. She is living in a rental property, terrified of her own shadow. She tells her family, "He is going to kill me," and no one will believe it. Act 3. The Vanishing. May 25th, 1989. It is a warm spring day. Cindy James has been relatively quiet for a few weeks. She has been trying to rebuild her life. But on this day, she misses a scheduled appointment. Her friends call her house. No answer. They call Ozzy cabin. Ozzy goes to the house. Her car, a blue Chevette, is missing. He enters the house. It is empty. But it is not normal. In the kitchen, he finds groceries on the counter as if she had just come home and was interrupted. There is a receipt from the grocery store time-stamped earlier that day. But there is something else. On the table, there is a note. It is not a suicide note. It simply says, "Don't look for me." Ozzy calls the police. A missing person search is launched. Later that day, Cindy's car is found. It is parked in a parking lot of a local shopping plaza not far from her home. Inside the car, the police find groceries. They find a wrapped gift she had bought. But there is something ominous. The driver's side door is locked. But the passenger door is unlocked. And on the floor of the driver's side, there is a bloodstain. It is Cindy's blood. But Cindy is nowhere to be found. The police search the area. They canvass the neighborhood. Nothing. Days pass. Then weeks. The mystery of Cindy James grips Vancouver. Is she hiding? Has she run away to start a new life? Or has the stalker finally made his move? 2 weeks later, on June 8th, 1989, the answer comes. And it is more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Act 4. The Body in the Yard. The location is an abandoned house in Richmond, a suburb not far from where Cindy lived. The house is dilapidated, the yard overgrown with tall grass and weeds. A municipal worker is checking the property. He walks into the backyard. Lying in the tall grass, he sees a body. It is Cindy James. She is lying on her side. She is fully clothed. Her shoes are missing. But it is the way she is bound that stops the breath in the worker's throat. Her hands are tied behind her back. But they are not just tied. They are hog-tied. A black nylon stocking binds her wrists. Another stocking binds her ankles. A rope connects her neck to her ankles, pulling her head back in a painful, unnatural arch. If she struggles, if she kicks her legs, the rope tightens around her neck, strangling her. It is a torture bind. And there is one final, chilling detail. A black nylon stocking is tied tightly around her neck. The bind is complex. The location is secluded. But as the forensic team examines the body, the impossible questions begin to surface again. The knots. The knots binding her hands and feet are intricate. There are multiple knots. But the police experts look at them and say, these could have been tied by the victim herself. They demonstrate how a person could loop the rope around their neck, tie their ankles, and then, with great difficulty, bring their hands behind their back and secure them. It seems physically possible. But is it psychologically plausible? Would a woman, terrified for 7 years, drive herself to an abandoned house, inject herself with a lethal dose of morphine, and then spend her final, dying minutes tying herself into an excruciating torture bind in a field of tall grass?
Why?
Why would anyone do that? Act 5. The Autopsy and the Inquiry. The autopsy reveals high levels of morphine, flurazepam, and other sedatives in her system. A needle puncture mark is found on her arm. There are no signs of a struggle at the scene. No drag marks in the grass. It appears she walked there, or was carried there without resistance, perhaps while drugged. The police double down on their theory. They classify the death as suicide. They argue that Cindy James was mentally ill. They claim she staged the 7 years of harassment to get attention, perhaps due to a deep-seated trauma or a personality disorder. They theorize that this was the grand finale, a staged death designed to frame the imaginary stalker and punish the police and her ex-husband for not believing her. Her parents are horrified. "My daughter was murdered," her father declares to the press.
She was terrified of this man.
"She told us he would kill her. And now he has." The public outcry is massive. The idea that a woman could hog-tie herself to death seems ludicrous to the average citizen. A coroner's inquest is called. This is a special court proceeding to determine the cause of death. It becomes one of the longest and most expensive inquests in British Columbia's history. Witnesses take the stand. Ozzy Cabin, the private investigator, testifies. He is adamant. "She was murdered," he says. He describes the fear he saw. He describes the incident where he found her in the ditch. She couldn't have faked that hypothermia, he argues. She was nearly dead. He points out the knots. Yes, maybe a Houdini could tie them, he says. But a drugged woman? A dying woman? In the dark? Alone? Psychiatrists take the stand. They are divided. Some say her behavior fits the profile of a woman suffering from severe mental illness who stages attacks for care. Others say she shows the classic signs of a victim of long-term trauma and stalking. But the most damning evidence against the suicide theory comes from the knots themselves. A knot expert testifies. He examines the bindings. He points out that the knots were tight, very tight. To tie them behind your back, while suffering from a morphine overdose, would require immense dexterity and strength. And then there is the morphine. The levels in her blood were lethal. A person with that much morphine in their system would be incapacitated almost immediately. Could she have injected herself, walked to the yard, and then performed the elaborate tying ritual before the drugs knocked her out? It seemed scientifically unlikely. Act 6. The suspects. If it was murder, who was the stalker? The investigation had looked at several men. Suspect 1. Roy Makepeace. Her ex-husband. A psychiatrist. He was a large man. Their divorce had been difficult. Cindy had told friends she was afraid of him. During the 7 years, Roy had admitted that he didn't believe her stories. The police investigated him thoroughly. He had alibis for many of the incidents. No physical evidence ever linked him to the attacks. Suspect 2. Pat McBride. A police officer who had dated Cindy briefly during the harassment period. Some found it suspicious that the stalker seemed to know police procedure and how to avoid detection. But again, no hard evidence. Suspect 3. An unknown serial predator. Was there a stranger watching her? Someone who became obsessed? The 1980s were a time before digital footprints. A stalker could remain a ghost. The inquest revealed a chilling detail about the notes. The cutout letters. Forensic analysis showed they were cut from magazines found in Cindy's own house. The police used this as proof of her guilt. She cut them herself, they said. But Ozzy Cabin argued the opposite. If a stalker breaks into your house, he uses what is there. He uses your magazines to mock you, to show he can touch your things. The inquest lasted for weeks. It was a battle between the suicide narrative of the police and the murder narrative of the family and Ozzy Cabin. The jury deliberated. They had to choose suicide, homicide, or accident. They came back with a verdict that satisfied no one. Undetermined. They ruled that Cindy James died of an unknown event. They could not say for sure if it was suicide. They could not say for sure if it was murder. It was a legal shrug, a question mark carved into a tombstone. Act 7. The Impossible Truth. Years have passed since Cindy James died in that overgrown yard. The case remains one of the most polarizing mysteries in true crime history. Those who believe it was suicide point to the lack of physical evidence of an attacker. They point to the staged nature of the fires and the earlier attacks. They point to the magazines in her house. They argue that the human mind is capable of incredible deception, even self-deception. Cindy James, they say, was a tragic figure who was destroyed by her own mind, trapping herself in a web of lies until the only escape was a final, dramatic death. Those who believe it was murder point to the body. They look at the hog-tie. They look at the lethal dose of morphine. They look at the 7 years of terror. They ask, how could a stalker evade the police for 7 years? The answer, they say, is simple. The stalker was smart, he was patient, and he knew the police weren't looking for him because they were too busy blaming the victim. They believe Cindy James was the victim of the perfect crime, a murder committed in plain sight, camouflaged by the victim's own fear and the authorities' disbelief. One detail haunts everyone who looks at the case: the black nylon stocking around her neck. In the 100 incidents reported over 7 years, the stalker had used a nylon stocking to strangle her multiple times. It was his signature. If Cindy killed herself, did she use the stocking to stage the scene one last time? Or was it the calling card of a killer who finally finished what he started? Cindy James died alone in the dark. Whether she was killed by a phantom in the night or the demons in her own mind, her death was a terrifying, lonely end. She is buried in a quiet grave. But the question of how she ended up hog-tied in an abandoned lot remains open. Was she the ultimate victim of a stalker? Or was she the ultimate victim of herself?